The sun had just dipped below the horizon in Atlanta, Georgia, leaving the sky a bruised shade of purple. The streetlights on Peachtree Road flickered to life, casting a pale glow over the bustling evening crowd. At the edge of a busy intersection, a small grocery store parking lot hummed with activity cars pulling in and out, shoppers juggling bags, and the faint hum of a street musician playing a saxophone nearby. In the midst of it all stood Simone Brooks, a 40-year-old black woman whose poised demeanor and stylish trench coat marked her as someone who belonged in a boardroom, not a parking lot. But tonight, Simone was just trying to get home after a long day, her arms full of grocery bags as she headed toward her SUV. Simone was no stranger to pressure. As a senior executive at a major Atlanta-based tech firm, she'd spent years navigating corporate ladders and breaking glass ceilings. Her success had come at a cost: late nights, missed family dinners, and the constant weight of being one of the few black women in her field. But it had also brought her pride, a beautiful home in Buckhead, and a loving family, her husband, Marcus, and their 12-year-old daughter, Zoe. Tonight, she'd promised Zoe they'd bake cookies together, a rare moment of normalcy in her hectic life. She was almost to her car when the trouble started. 2 Atlanta Police Department officers, Patrolman James Carter and Patrolman David Ellis, were parked nearby, their cruiser idling as they watched the parking lot with bored, predatory eyes. Carter, a 35-year-old with a buzz cut and a chip on his shoulder, had a reputation for being tough on crime, a euphemism for targeting anyone who didn't fit his narrow worldview. Ellis, 29, and still finding his footing on the force, followed Carter's lead, eager to prove himself. They'd been called to the area for a report of a suspicious individual, a vague description that Carter took as license to harass anyone he pleased. Carter's eyes landed on Simone, her confident stride and expensive coat catching his attention. To him, she didn't belong here, not in this neighborhood, not with that car, not with that air of authority. "Look at her," he muttered to Ellis, his voice low. "Bet she's up to something. Let's check her out." Ellis hesitated, his brow furrowing. "She's just carrying groceries. Man, maybe we should— You want to be a cop or not?" Carter snapped, already opening his door. "Come on." Simone was loading her bags into the trunk when the officers approached, their boots heavy on the asphalt. She sensed them before she saw them, the air shifting with a familiar tension. She turned, her expression calm but wary, her hands still on the grocery bags. "Evening. Officers," she said, her voice steady. "Can I help you?" Carter stopped a few feet away, his hand resting on his holster, his eyes cold. "We got a report of a suspicious individual in the area," he said, his tone sharp. "You got ID?" Simone's jaw tightened, but she kept her composure. She'd been through this before too many times. The random stops, the skeptical looks, the unspoken assumption that she didn't belong. "I'm just heading home with my groceries," she said, gesturing to the bags. "I haven't done anything wrong, but yes, I have ID. It's in my purse." She moved slowly, deliberately, reaching for her purse on the passenger seat. Carter's hand twitched toward his gun, his voice barking. "Keep your hands where I can see them." Simone froze, her heart pounding. "I'm just getting my ID," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You asked for it." Ellis shifted uncomfortably. his eyes darting between Carter and Simone. "Maybe we should just let her go." "James," he muttered. "She's not causing any trouble." But Carter wasn't listening. He stepped closer, his face inches from Simone's, his voice low and menacing. "You don't tell me what to do," he snarled. "Turn around, hands behind your back." Simone's breath caught, but she didn't move. "I'm not under arrest," she said, her voice steady despite the fear creeping up her spine. "You have no reason to detain me. I know my rights." Carter's eyes flashed with rage. "You think you're smart?" he spat. He grabbed her arm, twisting it behind her back with a force that made her gasp. The grocery bags fell to the ground, oranges rolling across the pavement, a jar of marinara sauce shattering with a sharp crack. Simone struggled against his grip, her voice rising. "Let go of me. I haven't done anything." "Stop resisting," Carter shouted, slamming her against the side of her SUV. He yanked her other arm back, snapping handcuffs around her wrists with a vicious tug. Simone's cheek pressed against the cold metal of the car, pain shooting through her shoulders, her heart racing with a mix of fear and fury. A small crowd had gathered, some pulling out their phones to record, others shouting in protest. Ellis stepped forward, his voice shaky. "James, come on. This is too much." "She's not a threat." "Shut up." Carter snapped, his hand on Simone's back, pinning her in place. "She's a problem. I can feel it." Simone's mind raced, her breath coming in short. Sharp gasps. She knew she couldn't fight back, not physically, not against an armed cop with a hair-trigger temper, but she also knew she wasn't powerless. She twisted her head, her voice cutting through the chaos. "I want to make a phone call," she said, her tone firm despite the pain. "I'm entitled to a call." Carter laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You don't get to make demands," he said. But the crowd was growing louder, their voices a chorus of anger and support. "Let her go," someone shouted. "You're on camera," yelled another. Ellis, visibly nervous, leaned in. "Just let her make the call, man. We don't need this getting worse." Carter glared at him, but relented, his grip on Simone loosening slightly. "Fine," he growled. "One call. Make it quick." Simone's hands were still cuffed, but Ellis retrieved her phone from her purse, holding it up to her ear as she gave him the contact. The phone rang twice before a deep, familiar voice answered. Simone. "You okay, baby Marcus?" she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "I'm in the parking lot on Peachtree Road. 2 officers have me in handcuffs. They're saying I'm a suspicious individual. I need you here, now." Marcus's voice hardened, a mix of fear and fury. "I'm on my way. Don't say anything else to them. I'll handle this." Carter smirked, overhearing the exchange. "What's your husband gonna do?" he taunted. "Cry to the news. You're not getting out of this." Simone didn't respond. She didn't need to. Marcus was coming, and when he arrived, Carter and Ellis would learn exactly who they'd messed with. Marcus Brooks arrived 15 minutes later, his black sedan screeching into the parking lot with a force that turned heads. The crowd parted as he stepped out, a tall, imposing figure in a tailored suit, his face a mask of controlled rage. Marcus wasn't just Simone's husband. He was the deputy chief of the Atlanta Police Department, one of the highest-ranking black officers in the city's history. He'd spent his career fighting for reform, rooting out corruption, and holding officers accountable. Often at great personal cost, he was respected by many, feared by some, and utterly devoted to his family. Carter and Ellis didn't recognize him at first. Their attention focused on Simone, who was still cuffed and pressed against her SUV. The crowd, however, knew exactly who Marcus was, their murmurs growing louder as he approached. "That's Deputy Chief Brooks," someone whispered. "They're in for it now." Marcus's eyes locked onto Simone, his heart twisting at the sight of her handcuffed, her face pressed against the car, her groceries scattered on the ground. He strode forward, his voice booming with authority. "What the hell is going on here?" Carter turned, his smirk fading as he registered Marcus's presence. Ellis's eyes widened, recognition dawning. Sir?" Ellis stammered, stepping back. We got a report of a suspicious individual. She was suspicious." Marcus cut in, his voice like a whip. "That's my wife, Officer Simone Brooks. You've got her in handcuffs over a suspicious individual report." In a grocery store parking lot, Carter's face paled, but he tried to hold his ground. "She was non-compliant," he said, his voice less certain now. "We asked for ID, and she got an attitude. We had to detain her." Marcus stepped closer, his eyes burning with fury. "Non-compliant. You've got her cuffed for carrying groceries to her car. You didn't even run her plates, did you? Because if you had, you'd know that's her vehicle. You'd know she's a law-abiding citizen with no record. But you didn't bother with that, did you? You saw a black woman and decided she didn't belong." The crowd was silent, the weight of Marcus's words hanging in the air. Carter opened his mouth to argue, but Marcus held up a hand, silencing him. "Take those cuffs off her. Now." Ellis moved quickly, fumbling with the keys as he uncuffed Simone. She rubbed her wrists, her eyes meeting Marcus's, a mix of relief and anger in her gaze. Marcus pulled her into his arms, his voice soft but fierce. "I'm so sorry, baby. I've got you." Simone nodded, her composure returning. They need to be held accountable. "Marcus," she whispered, "this can't happen again." "It won't," he promised, his jaw tight. He turned to Carter and Ellis, his voice cold. "You're both suspended, effective immediately. Turn in your badges and weapons to internal affairs by end of shift. You'll be investigated for abuse of power, racial profiling, and excessive force, and I'll personally make sure this goes all the way up the chain." Carter's face twisted with rage, his hands clenching into fists. "You can't do this," he shouted. "I've got rights. The union will." "The union won't save you," Marcus interrupted, his voice like steel. "You assaulted my wife on camera, in front of witnesses, for no reason other than your own bias. You're done." The crowd erupted in cheers, their phones still recording as Carter and Ellis were escorted back to their cruiser by another officer who'd arrived on the scene. Simone stood beside Marcus, her head high, her dignity intact despite the ordeal. The street musician across the lot struck up a triumphant tune, the notes carrying over the noise of the crowd. By the next morning, the incident was everywhere. The videos from the crowd had gone viral on X, racking up millions of views overnight. The footage was damning Carter's rough handling of Simone, her calm insistence on her rights, Marcus's arrival and takedown of the officers. News outlets ran with the story. Racist cops handcuff black woman, shocked when her husband turns out to be their boss. Protests erupted outside the Atlanta PD headquarters, with signs reading, "End racial profiling and justice." For Simone sat in her living room, a cup of tea in her hands. Zoe curled up beside her. The bruises on her wrists were a stark reminder of the night before. But she felt a strange sense of calm. Marcus had stayed up all night, coordinating with internal affairs, ensuring the investigation would be thorough and swift. He sat across from her now, his face etched with exhaustion, but also pride. "You okay?" he asked, his voice soft. Simone nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "I am now, thanks to you." Marcus shook his head. "You're the strong one. Simone, you kept your cool. You stood your ground. I just finished what you started. The investigation moved quickly, fueled by public pressure and Marcus's influence. Carter and Ellis were fired within the week, their careers in tatters, their names synonymous with scandal. The Atlanta PD issued a public apology, and Marcus spearheaded a new initiative for bias training and community oversight, determined to ensure no one else would suffer like Simone had. A month later, Simone and Marcus stood together at a press conference, their hands clasped, Zoe at their side. Simone spoke, her voice clear and powerful. "This isn't just about me," she said, her eyes sweeping the crowd. "It's about every person who's ever been targeted, every family that's lived in fear of those meant to protect us. We won't stop fighting until the system changes." The crowd roared, their support a tidal wave of hope and resolve. Simone looked at Marcus, at Zoe, at the city she loved, and felt the weight of the moment. Carter and Ellis had tried to break her, but they'd only made her stronger. And now, the world knew her name.